The naming of the vagina. Fascinating. Things we can do with our bits. Sparks coming out of my head, like, ugh. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Happy Monday. Hope everyone's doing wonderfully. This week, it's fascinating. I'm going to be talking about just some kind of, it started with basically the naming of the vagina and then just some other facts that I've recently learned that I think are absolutely so interesting and genuinely blew my mind, and I think everyone should know them. So it basically started when I attended a clitoris workshop about a month or two ago. I'll put the details of it down below. This wonderful woman, Louisa, did it, and usually she does these workshops called clit nights, like in person, but obviously with Corona it had to be online, and it was just fascinating. And I was like, I have to do a video on this right now and everyone has to know and the world would be a better place. So I'm just going to get started with some of the things that we should all be knowing, and then hopefully you will know them and go forth and conquer the world with this new knowledge. So let's get started. So, I don't even know where to begin. First of all, the naming of the vagina. So let's start off. Do we know what the vagina is? So the vagina is just the canal, basically the vaginal canal. People use the word vagina to talk about like the whole female genitalia, but that is just so not accurate or true. It's just the vaginal canal, basically, where you'd put a tampon up or a penis or a vibrator. That's just what it is. And so what Louisa pointed out was that she's German, and so in German language, I think, and a couple different languages, the word vagina kind of stems from the word for sheath. And a sheath, which I didn't know, even in English, I didn't know this word. The sheath is like a place where you put a sword. And so historically, the vagina was named after sheaths, i.e. where you put a sword. And I think we can all imagine that the sword is a penis. And so this to me is mind-blowing, because it basically means that the vagina was so named as the receiver of a penis. Like, so I'm guessing that the penis was named, I actually don't know where the penis got its name, I should look that up. A video on that the next time. But the vagina, the woman's, or you know, the woman's body part was named just as a receiver to the man's part, which is so annoying and so frustrating. And it's just like, we exist outside of men, you know, we are not just reciprocals for men, and it's not surprising at all considering society's views towards women and the fact that sex for women is so often passive, and it's, you know, it's the men doing it and inserting, and it's the woman just taking it, you know, lying back. And so that just like blew my mind, that the whole, like, the name of it is actually after a sheath, just something to receive the penis. Like, why could it not just be named on its own, you know? And like, I encourage you to just even go Google all of this and do even more research into this, because I think it's absolutely fascinating. And again, it's like, you know, like, men named it again, so again, it's just not surprising, but just so annoying. What I also think is absolutely fascinating is the fact that a sword is a weapon, and that they named it after the thing that carries a weapon. And I think, like, I was so, like, when I was attending this workshop and she was saying all this stuff, I was just like, wow, like, that is so just profound, and I just think really important to think about. And I don't know, would I have put two and two together if she hadn't have explicitly said this, that, you know, a sword is a weapon. And so often men's penises is used as a weapon, and you know, like, rape is a weapon, and it's attacking, and it's, you know, and I just thought that was fascinating, just to think of it through that lens. And I just think so dodgy and problematic that men, again, I get, obviously, a sword is, you know, this shape, and a penis is also this shape. I get that's maybe where the men would have been coming from, but I do also think it's really interesting to note that they also equated their penis to a weapon, and penises are so often used as weapons against women, that I think that is just really kind of sad, but interesting to mention. Another thing that was also in this workshop, which I think is, again, just this everything, my mind was blown listening to all this, is that the sword has a function outside of the vagina. And this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier on when I was talking about the naming of the vagina. You know, the sword has a you know, if we're looking at the sword and the sheath kind of metaphor or whatever, the sword has a function outside of the sheath, you know, like the sword has a function outside of just, you know, when you stick it in the thing, it cuts things and it kills people and it does things, you know. Whereas the sheath, i.e. the vagina, its sole purpose is to receive the sword. And so again, it's just so interesting when you think about it in terms of like society and how men and women act. It's like men can go off and do all these things and they have so many more purposes outside of their relationships to women, whereas women are so often just seen as humans but in relation to a man, you know. So when we say like, oh, a woman has died, it's like, oh, she's someone's daughter, she's someone's wife. It's like she's actually just someone. she's the person, she's a human, you know. And I think that's really just sad that like this, and just really again interesting to point out that the sword has all these different functions, and the sheath, the vagina, is its only purpose is to receive the sword, or at least that's how it's named, you know, which, and obviously it does not. There are so many other things we can do with our bits other than, you know, interact with men, but that's how they obviously viewed it, and I think that's just kind of an interesting thing to think about as well. Another thing that you pointed out as well, which is also fascinating, is the kind of heteronormativity of it all. So for people that don't know, kind of heteronormativity is just basically when we assume everything is like is straight and it's, you know, man, woman, and we don't take any kind of context of gay relationships, lesbian relationships, etc. into account. And I think again this was really interesting in that, you know, in the naming of it, and obviously it was named a long time ago and they did not take, you know, lesbian relationships or gay relationships into account when naming it. So it's even more interesting because you think about it, you know, two sheaths, you know, two of these, you know, receivers for swords, you know, you can't do anything with two sheaths together, you know. Two sheaths don't do anything together, whereas two swords fight each other. So I think that's even more fascinating. And again, like these were all like Louisa's words, and I just was, my mind was just being blown at everything she was saying. You know, two sheaths don't do anything together. So there's just kind of no question of like of lesbian relationships, you know, or two women having sex, you know, because it's just like, well, assume, you know, two sheaths or two vaginas don't do anything together. You know, that concept was never thought of or there. And then the fact that swords fight each other, which I think again is so interesting when you think of like, you know, men kind of marking their territory and, you know, fighting over women. And it's like, again, you know, there again was probably just very little thought gone into two men with two penises having sex and, you know, being together and having it be romantic and not having it be, you know, fighting or, you know, a war. So I think that also is just fascinating and really, really interesting to think about. So one thing as well that she was kind of mentioning is, and it's something that I'm kind of even now like, oh God, because I'm big on language. As anyone who watches my videos know, I'm big on language and the history behind it and, you know, what it really means. And I'm already starting to really kind of use the word vulva to describe the whole thing, because sometimes like we say vagina but we actually mean the whole thing vulva. So I've started to use the word vulva a lot more anyway, and with the word vagina a lot less. But I know that like the word vagina is the one that's most known, and so sometimes even though I'll want to say vulva, I'll say vagina just so the person who I'm talking to will understand me, you know. But like she was making the point that like, you know, I don't really want to use the word vagina now because now I know the full meaning behind it, and I don't really like it. And I don't, it's like you don't want to be using a word that you know has this connotation and this deeper meaning of being this passive receptacle to a man's penis, you know, because that's not all vaginas are and that's not all women are. And I think that is so interesting. And it's like, yeah, do I want to be encouraging that, even though like probably no one knows this. I didn't know this and I'm a giant feminist, so it's about, like, probably I feel like very little people know the real meaning behind the naming of the word vagina. But it's like, I know, and like I don't want to be encouraging that mentality of, you know, women just being these passive receptacles for men and these passive actors during sex. And so maybe, you know, using the word vagina with all its history and meaning behind it is kind of reinforcing that. So it's like, oh, well, like what else am I meant to say? So one word that she put forward is like the vulva canal, which is cool, but again, like it's like, ugh, no one would know what you were talking about if you said that, but that could be a good one, vulva canal instead of vagina, you know. There's not really kind of any other terms. I think cervix is like just at the beginning. I think I could be actually totally wrong with that one, but I think, you know, the cervix is just at the beginning the canal. So again, you could kind of maybe say like, you know, like the cervix and then the rest of it. I don't know if you really wanted to be creative. But yeah, I think just, yeah, interesting thing to think about. Again, I was just really glad that she brought up all these points, and I was just like, wow, this is so interesting. Like, literally mind blown, like literally like sparks coming out of my head, like, ugh. And then again, fascinating point that she made is, you know, as I said before as well, you know, that we often, you know, mean the whole female genitalia, but we say just vagina. And it's, again, when you think about it, it's just so not surprising, because men were the ones who named this, obviously didn't think about like the clitoris or like the labia or like any other parts. Like, all they were concerned about was the vagina and where they could insert their penises. And so it makes complete sense now that vagina is the word that we, you know, that we often use, that's the most used word when referring to women's, you know, genitalia. But like, there's so much more going on than just the place where the penis goes. But it makes complete sense that that's like the one that we use, because that's all they were concerned about. And it's so, and again, it's just so annoying. It's like, there's so much more going on down there than just the place where the penis goes. And I think, again, really good to be having these conversations, because, you know, obviously, as we all know, there's the orgasm gap, and, you know, so many women can't orgasm through just penetration alone. They need you to go near the clitoris and do stuff. And so I think even having this conversation, and again, the importance of language and talking about the vulva, which contains the clitoris, and, you know, all these different parts, like, that is so important to ensure that women have healthy sex lives and get an orgasm and are satisfied. It's not just about where the penis can go and the pleasure that he can get. There's so much more going on for us, and an important part of that to me is saying vulva and including not just the vagina, and including everything. So again, yeah, just so interesting that, of course, the word vagina is the most common word for it, but it's not everything that's going on there. So we should really be using the word vulva more often and having that conversation. There's more going on down there. Another fascinating thing that she pointed out, which I didn't know, was, so obviously the labia. So the labia is like the lips, and apparently in other languages, the word labia, and again, not surprising, because women's genitals are so shamed and are so like taboo and are just so wrong, you know, something inherently wrong with them apparently. But that apparently the word labia in other languages has the word shame in front of them. It's just kind of worked in there, which again, I would encourage you all to kind of go Google and do a bit more research on, which I think is just mind-blowing. I don't have much more information on that. Obviously in English it's not the case, and that's the only language I speak fluently. But I would recommend, yeah, I mean, if you speak a different language, check if it's in your language, or, you know, like, and just see if the word shame has been inserted into the front of the word for labia, which I think is just insane. But yeah, apparently. And then another thing that she also pointed out, which was really interesting, is that, so if you don't know, so the labia, there's two types of labia, and they're typically known as the labia majora and the labia minora. And so the labia majora, and basically like majora is meant to be like major, you know, the bigger ones, and minora is meant to be like minor, and like, so the smaller ones, you would think. And so basically the majora are on the outside and the minora are on the inside. As we've seen in the last few years, like the rise in labiaplasty, like people, their labia minora being like too long, or, you know, for them, or they're just subconscious about it, and having that actually cut off to make it more kind of like niche and just kind of fit in with everything. And she was pointing out that like the naming is quite problematic, because you associate bigger with majora and smaller with minora, but for many people, like loads of people, the minora are actually longer or bigger, or there's just more skin there, and so they think that something's wrong with them. Like, they think, okay, these are the minora, these are the minor ones, they're meant to be smaller, therefore there's something wrong with me if I have long ones or something. And so I thought, like, that to me was just, again, fascinating, and like I was just like, oh my god, so true, you are just blowing my mind right now. So she proposed, say, instead of, you know, labia majora and labia minora, just saying outside labia and inside labia, because then there's no kind of sizing attached to them, and it's just saying the outside ones and the inside ones, you know, and then they could be whatever size they like. So I thought that was fascinating and really good, and like just like so many lessons just in this workshop that she did, that I was just like, I need to pass on to absolutely everyone. And I just think, yeah, it's just the importance of language and the connotations we attach to things and the importance we attach to things. And I just think, like, it's just, yeah, this to me is just like, oh, like so interesting. And that with the labia again is just fascinating. Like, it's just like when you look at the fact that people are getting their labia minoras cut and like surgery like done on them to make them smaller, it's just so sad. And like, it's just like whatever we can do, whether it's, you know, activism and talking about things and just talking about the language of things, like if we can do that and make people more okay with their bodies, that's just always a good thing in my books. So yeah, amazing. And then finally, just to finish on this little like quote that she also said at the in her workshop, which I thought was really good, and kind of encompasses the whole video. The whole is not the whole, which I think is great. It's like the whole, like, and basically it's like, you know, the vagina is not everything going on. It shouldn't be for men, it shouldn't be for women. There's so much more going on there that we need to know about, that we need to refer to when we're speaking about women's genitals. And this has such far-reaching consequences, not just for women's sex lives, but for healthcare and, you know, just our knowledge about our own bodies and periods and UTIs and just anything that can go wrong or right down there. We should know about it. We should know not just about the vagina, but everything else. And so the whole is not the whole, which I think is fascinating. So I will leave you on that. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Please subscribe to see more videos like this every week, and give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and leave any comments. If you have any more kind of fun facts or really upsetting facts about the vagina, please leave them down below, and I will see you all in next week's video. Bye!